We are witnessing the words of the prophets come to life in these last days, and all of the signs point to the fact that the coming of the Messiah, HaMashiach, is imminent and at the door, and we should be prepared. However, if you cannot see the writing on the wall, which is so clear in these last days, it may be too late for you. You may be too deceived to be able to understand the relevance of the Messiah and his coming, and you may not even understand the fact that you are deceived, because that's how deception works. After all, the one who is deceived does not even realize it. The scriptures tell us in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, or Hashatan, with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood, and with all deceit of unrighteousness in those perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. And for this reason, Elohim sends them a working of delusion for them to believe the falsehood, in order that all should be judged who did not believe the truth, but have delighted in the unrighteousness. And we see in these last days that sin and lawlessness and unrighteousness is abounding all over the world, and that the United States of America pushes this lawlessness and unrighteousness to the four corners of the earth using Hollywood, and that our own media in the States are nothing more than propaganda, constant, non-stop bombarding of propaganda. They push sexual deviances, they push violence, they push destruction, they push all types of perversities in these last days to capture your mind, to seize your mind, so that you will be deceived. And the scriptures tell us very clearly that because they love the lie, because they love the deception, that Elohim, Yahuwah, the creator of heaven and earth, will send them a delusion because they love the lie. And that this is all coming about in these last days. The lawless one who comes is synonymous with this idea of anti-Messiah or anti-Christ that's coming. This idea is according to all the power of Satan, is what it says, to do lying signs and wonders. Now, in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 9, we read, "And the great dragon was thrown out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Shaitan, or Satan, who leads all the world astray. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him." So this is very important, because we know that the book of Revelation tells us that Satan deceives the world, that Satan is the old serpent, is what it says. That Satan is the dragon, but he is also the serpent of old. Now in Genesis, or Bereshith, chapter 3, verse 1, we read, "And the serpent," or in Hebrew the term is Nachash, "was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, Is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden?" And we know how this dialogue continues on. And eventually Hawa, who has been called Eve, eats from the tree and gives to her husband Adam to eat. And this is how sin and death entered into the world, via the serpent who deceived Hawa, or Eve, into eating this fruit. So this is really important, because this term serpent in Hebrew, Nachash, doesn't just mean a serpent. When you look it up, you will find that Nachash means several things. One of the meanings of the word Nachash is literally an enchanter, a sorcerer, one who divines, one who does witchcraft. And we see such an example right in the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar. In the book of Numbers, Bamidbar 23, verse 23, we read, "For there is no sorcery against Yaakov, nor is there any divination against Yisrael. Now, in this context, we see the word sorcery is nachash. There is no nachash or sorcery against Jacob or Yaakov, nor is there any divination or kesem against Yisrael. Now it is said to Yaakov and to Yisrael, what has El done? Now these are famous words from the false prophet Bilam. Bilam was paid to curse Israel. And when Bilam was paid to curse Israel, he responded he could only do whatever Yahuwah Elohim said. Now, Bilam used nachash or divination to seek the will of Yahuwah. We read that right in this same section of verses, that he used this as a means so that he could attempt to prophesy. However, when he did this, he received the prophetic revelation that there is no nachash, there is no sorcery against Israel. Now remember, nachash again is not just sorcery and enchantment and divination, but also that old serpent called Hashatan. Now, I want to go a little further to prove a point in the book of Deuteronomy, or Devarim chapter 18, about how important it is to abstain from witchcraft and sorcery and magic and all these things, according to the scriptures, to participate in such activities, to worship idols, to burn incense to idols, to call on idols, to make oaths in the names of other idols and various things like this, is a capital punishment. There is a death penalty. This is what the Torah says, Deuteronomy 18, starting in verse 10. Let no one be found among you who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, because the ancient pagans would burn their children to Molech and to other deities. Or one who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whosoever does these are an abomination to Yahuwah, the supreme creator of heaven and earth. And because of these abominations, Yahuwah, your Elohim, drives them out from before you. So the other nations practiced witchcraft and sorcery. That is why Yahuwah drove them out. Israel was not supposed to. They were supposed to seek prophetic revelation from Yahuwah himself, not through using divination and witchcraft and sorcery. Now there are a multitude of Hebrew words we could examine here that deal with divination and sorcery and magic, but for time's sake, we're just going to move forward. But the basic word for sorcery is usually kesem. Sometimes, again, it is nachash, which is the word for the serpent of old, who was a sorcerer, by the way. Very important to understand this. So the Torah forbids sorcery, magic, soothsaying, all this. Now in the book of Revelation further, we read about the whore of Babylon. Just about everybody knows about the whore of Babylon, at least has heard of her, so I'm not going to give her a major introduction. However, we read of her judgment in the book of Revelation, chapter 18, verse 23. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in you, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in you, for your merchants were the great men of the earth. For by your sorceries were all nations deceived. So in most translations, your King James Version and your New King James Version, various translations, you're going to see the word sorcery. Okay? In the Scriptures version that I'm using here, it says drug sorceries. The reason for this is, if you go into the Greek, you will find the term here for sorcery is pharmakia. And pharmakia may sound very familiar to you. It gives us such words such as pharmacy and pharmaceutical. This word is very fascinating in the Greek in the book of Revelation, because when you look it up, it has very, very deep meanings pertaining to sorcery.